Chapter 7 of Part 1 from The Devils by Dostoevsky. Immediately on their return from Petersburg, Mrs. Stavrogin sent her friend abroad for a rest. Besides, it was necessary for them to part for a time. She felt that. Mr. Verkovensky set out on his journey full of enthusiasm. I shall come to life there, he kept repeating. There at last I shall set to work. But already in his first letters from Berlin he struck his usual note. My heart is broken. He wrote to Mrs. Stavrogin, I can't forget anything. Here in Berlin, everything reminds me of my past, my first innocent raptures, my first agonies. Where is she? Where are they both? Where are you, my two angels of whom I was never worthy? Where is my son, my beloved son? And lastly, where am I, my own self, my former self? Strong as steel and firm as a rock, when today some fellow like Andrejev, an Greek Orthodox clown with a beard, put Briser mon existence in do, etc., etc. As for his son, Mr. Verkovensky had only seen him twice in his life. The first time when he was born, and the second time quite recently in Petersburg, where the young man was about to enter the university. All his life, the boy, as I have already mentioned, had been brought up by his aunts at Mrs. Stavrogin's expense in the Orenburg province, about 500 miles from Shavorshniki. As for Andrejev, that is Andreyev, he was simply one of our local merchants, a shopkeeper, a great eccentric, a self-taught archaeologist, and a passionate collector of Russian antiquities, who sometimes engaged in a battle of wits with Mr. Verkovensky on some erudite subject, and particularly on some progressive idea. This worthy shopkeeper, with a grey beard and large silver spectacles, still owed Mr. Verkovensky 400 rubles for a few acres of timber he had bought on the latter's little estate near Shavorshniki. Though Mrs. Stavrogin had provided her friend liberally with funds when she sent him to Berlin, Mr. Verkovensky had specially counted on getting the 400 rubles before he left for abroad, probably for some secret purpose of his own, and he nearly burst into tears when Andrejev asked him to wait another month, being, by the way, fully entitled to ask for such a postponement, for he had paid the first installments almost 6 months in advance, because Mr. Verkovensky was greatly in need of money at the time. Mrs. Stavrogin eagerly read through the first letter and, underlining in pencil the exclamation, "Where are you both?" put the date on it and locked it up in her casket. He was, of course, thinking of his two deceased wives. The theme of the second letter she received from Berlin was different. I'm working 12 hours a day. If only he'd said 7, muttered Mrs. Stavrogin. I'm rummaging in the libraries, collating, copying, rushing about. Been to see the professors. I have renewed my acquaintance with the excellent Dundasov family. What a fascinating woman Mrs. Dundasov is even now. She sends you her regards. Her young husband and her 3 nephews are all in Berlin. I sit up talking till daybreak with the young people, and we have almost Athenian parties, but only in respect of their intellectual finesse and exquisite taste. Everything is very noble. Plenty of music, Spanish airs, dreams of human regeneration, ideas of eternal beauty, the Sistine Madonna, light alternating with darkness, but there are spots even on the sun. Oh, my friend, my noble and loyal friend, in my heart I am with you and I am yours. With you alone always, into pays, even dans le pays de Macar et de ses vous, of whom you remember we so often spoke in fear and trembling in Petersburg before our departure. I recall it with a smile. Having seized the frontier, I felt safe at last, a strange and new sensation, for the first time after so many years, etc., etc. Well, that's all nonsense, Mr. Stavrogin decided, folding up that letter too. If he has his Athenian parties till daybreak, He can't be spending 12 hours over his books. He drunk when he wrote it, I wonder. How dare that Dundasov woman send me her regards. However, let him have his fling. The phrase dans le pays de Macar et de ses vous meant where Macar never drove his sheep. Mr. Verkovensky sometimes purposely translated Russian proverbs and idiomatic expressions into French in a most absurd way, no doubt being fully able to understand and translate them better, but he used to do it just for the sake of showing off, and he thought it very witty, but his fling did not last long. He did not hold out for 4 months and hurried back to Shavorshniki. His last letters were entirely filled with outpourings of the most sentimental love for his absent friend and were literally bedewed with tears of separation. There are natures who, like lapdogs, become extremely attached to a home. The meeting of the two friends was rapturous. 2 days later, everything was as before and even more boring than before. My friend Mr. Verkovensky said to me a fortnight later in dead secret, "My friend, I have discovered something that is too awful for words. Je suis un ordinary hanger on a train de plus, mas rein de plus." Whatever the fuck that means. End of chapter 7.